if you like the channel, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/MundaneMat. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and today is November 8th, 2017, and we're like a week and a day away from Justice League, which I know is a bit sacrilegious considering that I've got Thanos here on the screen, but I don't care. It's Justice League. It's coming. I'm so happy. My tickets are already purchased, and I'm excited for it, and I hope that it's better than Thor Ragnarok. Not that Thor was bad. I had some complaints. Mostly about the comedic timing of a lot of it and how I don't feel it really timed. Really didn't feel much like a Marvel movie. However, people seem to really respond to it, which means we're going to see more comedic films coming out of the MCU, which isn't bad, provided that that they think things through a little bit better. I feel a lot with Thor Ragnarok had a lot to do. My complaints with Thor Ragnarok, I should say, had a lot to do with that particular aspect. But I don't want to go more into that. Anyway, again, just want to say, love the movie. I had complaints about some of the comedy. That's really about it. But speaking of franchises that have hit kind of rough starts before they've gotten really going, that would be Universal's The Dark Universe, which apparently now has been put on hold. And this is what all the reports are saying today. It hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but that's essentially what's going on here. So it says here that Universal Studios had high hopes for its 2017 reboot of the Mummy franchise, which planned to use the movie as a launch pad for a sprawling shared universe of monster movies starring characters like the Bride of Frankenstein and the Wolfman. According to a new report, though, those plans have been put on hold. And this, again, is kind of the problem with the Dark Universe as a whole. From the get-go, it was planned as this big outing, not something that started off as maybe one or two movies and then expand from there. It was already like, we're doing the Dark Universe. But they also waited until like right before the release of the movie in order to pitch the idea of the Dark Universe. It wasn't like, Universal 2 years ago when this thing was being talked about going, this is the Dark Universe, this is the mythos, this is the lore, this is the characters, this is what they're planning, and then creating media around that franchise that would get fans enticed to see what was going to go down and build from there. One of the reasons why, Marvel and DC have their universes like this is because they've got decades and upon decades of material from these characters that they've been able to use. Now, granted, the monster movies have very similar lengths of time in terms of content, but a shared universe is not something that they've done really outside of the 1980s film The Monster Squad, which if you've never seen The Monster Squad, what the hell are you doing? Stop this right now. Go find it and watch it at least twice and then come back. It's okay. I'll wait. For those of you who have seen it and know what I'm talking about, let's continue. Alex Kurtzman and Chris Morgan, two writers, producers initially tapped by Universal to map out the studio's grand vision for its Dark Universe, have reportedly left the project in favor of other endeavors elsewhere. Kurtzman is currently working as an executive producer on Star Trek Discovery, in addition to a number of other projects he's currently involved in. Morgan, on the other hand, has returned to Fast and Furious franchise and is said to be working on a spin-off film starring The Rock and Jason Statham, and not Tyrese Gibson. They had to throw in that jab on Tyrese. So yeah, Kurtzman has been many fingers, many pies, long time. There are people out there that do blame him for what happened with Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then the collapse of that, because him and Robert Orci, they co-wrote that, and then as a result that kind of failed to connect, and Sinister Six failed to launch, and so on and so forth. But I can't really be too mad about that, considering that Spider-Man's in the MCU now, so I'm not too upset. But that being said, they also worked on Star Trek Into Darkness, and that was one that, again, a lot of the blame was put on to J.J. Abrams, but they also, wrote it, and so maybe they're kind of showing their age right now. And that happens from time to time. Chris Morgan, on the other hand, why walk away from Universal's most profitable franchise? That's the thing. Go back to that, do your spin-off film, but I would still keep something with the Dark Universe in the back burner. Now, it says that the filmmaker's decision to leave isn't all that surprising, given that the Dark Universe's sharp loss of momentum following the Mummy's lackluster box office performance. While it raked in over $400 million worldwide, those numbers were nowhere near what Universal wanted or needed of its multi-million-dollar investment in the Tom Cruise-led movie. This plan also has been troubled since before The Mummy. 2014's Dracula Untold was initially positioned as the first film in the shared universe and then discarded, which is true, as I pointed out before. Universal, again, should have laid the groundwork with Dracula Untold and then released a bunch of media afterward, comic books, graphic novels, maybe even go as far as to do do radio dramas, very similar to Halo's The Hunt series that they had leading into Halo 5, explore various media in order to get fans involved. That's one thing that Marvel's done very well, and Disney's done very well, and DC's done very well. They've created these other areas for people to get info on these characters or to get more stories, so on and so forth. Universal failed to do that right away, and that was their big problem. Is they started, they counted their eggs before they hatched, essentially. Now, in a statement to The Hollywood Reporter, Universal's president of production, Pete Kramer, was measured in the way he acknowledged that the studio was still licking its wounds, saying, "We've learned many lessons throughout the creative process on Dark Universe so far, and we are viewing these titles as filmmaker-driven vehicles, each with their own distinct vision. We are not rushing to meet a release date, and we'll move forward with these films when we feel they are the best versions of themselves." So essentially, kind of going back to the drawing board. The Dark Universe will probably exist, but maybe in one of those anthology-esque type film mindsets or labels. Think of Cloverfield, for example. You have Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane existing, kind of like distant, non-blood related cousins of one another. And then this new one, God Particle, coming out next year, is going to also have the same, kind of distant cousin feel to it, but all under the same maybe Twilight Zone-esque umbrella, where it's similar themed but dealing with different non-connected story ideas. And that's essentially what I feel that they might do here. And that could work out, actually. That could work out well if they decide to go and do something else, and have another film, and then also maybe just have Russell Crowe pop in and out. And that would be the connection between them, instead of never, bringing them together, definitely maybe building up the idea. I still think, honestly, if it was me, and I know that this would never go through a board of directors or whatever, I would just say screw it and just, keep going ahead as planned, right? Because they know they're going to make over $1 billion, probably, 1.5 to 2 billion with the next Jurassic World movie. They're going to continue to make billions off the last couple Fast and Furious films, as well as the spinoff for The Rock. We know these things are going to happen, so it's really not that big of a deal. I would just keep going with it, but just lower the budget. Lower the budget, tell the filmmakers, look, if you want to do this, this is what we're going to do. This is the budget we're going to work with. Make it work. And if that's not going to work, then find someone who will do it. Trying to make it filmmaker-driven vehicles feels like it's playing into an ego, like Tom Cruise in The Mummy. It's like, I don't know if Tom Cruise should have starred in The Mummy. I just feel like he's trying to branch out into something after Jack Reacher failed, but we'll have to wait and see what happens next. But in the meantime, I'm cautiously excited to see what they come up with, if they ever do ever again. So anyway, let's jump over here to a comic book movie news. Now this is an interesting one too. News broke yesterday that Brian Michael Bendis, who was one of the key writers at Marvel, had jumped ship over to DC Comics, and had everyone going, "Oh my God, what's going on?" But apparently one of the reasons why he left had a lot to do with the fact that he had been kind of ousted from the MCU's creative committee, and that was one of the things on the table with this deal from Jeff Johns. So it says that back in the early years, MCU's early years, Brian Michael Bendis was part of the Marvel Creative Committee, a brain trust of Marvel's top comic book talent to help shape this franchise. One of Bendis' early notable contributions to the MCU was writing the Iron Man's post-credit scene. Now, let's be fair here, out of everything that you've ever been excited for with the MCU, at the end of Iron Man, when there's Nick Fury and he wants to talk about the Avengers initiative, everyone's nips got hard. I mean, they could cut glass till the end of time. I remember when that movie came out, I was on the phone with a friend of mine, who was in the theater watching the movie for the first time, and he called me up, and he's like, "Oh, is there anything during the end credits?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just watch, dude." And then he watched, and he heard, I heard him react live. He was in like Ohio or something, or Michigan, I think, and so he reacted live to the Avenger Initiative comment, and he just like lost his crap over it, right? So yeah, those are the, I would say that's probably like the biggest contribution to where we are now. And so, however, when Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige worked out a new arrangement where he could report directly to Disney rather than Marvel chairman Ike Perlmutter, this committee was dissolved, meaning that Bendis was no longer working on the MCU. Now, as part of his move to DC, Bendis has reportedly been offered a spot at the film/multimedia table, where he would work alongside DC president Jeff Johns, who took on a leadership role in the DCEU in May 2016. And so the thing is, that's an interesting offer, right? That almost comes across as like a Godfather-esque, "I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse." Horrible Marlon Brando, I apologize. But that's a lot of what it boils down to, essentially, is just like you've got this this person who was at the table, wrote probably like the best scene in the MCU thus far from its first debut film in 2008, and now we've got him jumping over to the DCEU, and quite frankly, they need it. They need a solid a team in order to make this thing work. We know that the DCEU is trying to change course. They're still trying to kind of move around Zack Snyder and get away from what he was attempting to do. However, I've heard reports that this was always meant to be a more fun and jovial take on the Justice League and not be as dark and dreary. Like Batman v Superman was kind of meant to just be that dark of a film, and then that was going to be it. And then after that, it was going to be a lot more about hope and optimism. But I don't necessarily believe that Zack Snyder is a bleak, cynical person who makes bleak, cynical films, and I have no problem with that. I love his bleak, cynical films. So I'm okay with that going forward, but I do see what they're trying to do, and they are probably trying to, bring in somebody who has a very, very, very reputable track record over there at Marvel, who can now bring that to DC. It's a bold play. We'll see if it works out for him. And I do believe it will work. And if anything, Brian Michael Bendis might have more of a shot working on the TV side of things, or any of the other kind of smaller multimedia side, where they're trying to then rebuild some stuff there or build up some stuff there to take it into the mainstream. And he would be a good person for that. I don't really agree with the guy politically, but I can't deny that he has an insane talent, and one that has been beneficial for Marvel and will now be beneficial for DC. So this is a fun one here. I heard about this the other day. I'm a little bit behind on the Lord of the Rings talks, but I'm actually like legit excited. There are people I know who are like seething with rage over this because they don't like the idea of it, period. But trust me, this is going to be fun. One way or the other, whether it's going to be great or it's going to crash and burn, is going to be a lot of fun. So it says here, Jeff Bezos personally negotiating Lord of the Rings series adaptation at Amazon. Now, you might be asking yourself, why? Come on, Lord of the Rings. Aren't we just 2 years or 3 years out from the Battle of the Five Armies? That came out winter 2014. Yeah, it's winter 2017 now. It's been 3 years. So aren't we just too close to The Hobbit to go back to doing this kind of stuff? And the answer to that is no, actually we're not. Because even though we're 3 years out from The Hobbit, we are in fact 14 years out from The Lord of the Rings. We're 14 years ago the Lord of the Rings Return of the King came to cinemas. How crazy is that? 14 years ago, man. Dang. No, seriously, I can't even imagine. I know. I remember seeing that like the day it came out, you know what I mean? But that's how far away we are from that, and that's kind of playing into this whole decision. So it says here that just as Hulu did with The Handmaid's Tale, competitor Amazon may be seeking to strike gold with a series adaptation of another celebrated literary property. Warner Brothers Television and the estate of J.R.R. Tolkien are in early talks with Amazon Studios to develop a Lord of the Rings television series, noting that Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos is personally involved with the negotiations. No deal has been reached, although Amazon has reportedly emerged as a frontrunner for the series, which is currently being shopped. Though Bezos is a reported fan of fantasy and sci-fi, his uncharacteristic involvement in the development of an Amazon Studios series arrives at a tenuous time for the video division, which let go a trio of top staffers on the heels of sexual harassment allegations made against studio head Roy Price last month. In addition to Price, Amazon Studios head of scripted content Joe Lewis and head of unscripted content Conrad Riggs were also let go. Price's interim replacement is Amazon Studios COO Albert Chang, while Lewis was replaced by former Fox International exec Sharon Tal Uguado. So here's the thing to keep in mind about this one. Why is this happening? Why is Bezos involved? Why? Well, Bezos wants Game of Thrones. He wants his Game of Thrones. He wants to have that series that brings people to the Amazon platform, right? Now, the thing is, 1 out of every $2 spent online is spent through Amazon. It's not like this dude needs the money. This isn't really about money for him. This is about prestige and respect, and maybe smiting Netflix a little bit, and maybe smiting a little bit of HBO and other competitors out there in the marketplace. That's something to consider, though, is the fact that this is what he wants, and he's made that abundantly clear not too long ago. Also, he canceled like the show about Zelda Fitzgerald starring Christina Ricci, as well as The Last Tycoon, which was based on an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel that was starring Matt Bomber and Kelsey Grammer and Lily Collins. And I actually am quite upset about that because I really liked the first season of The Last Tycoon and would love to know what happens to Monroe Starr, since he basically had a heart attack at the end of the season and we had a cliffhanger, and now we'll never know. Because it's based on an unfinished book from F. Scott Fitzgerald too. And it was, an adaptation. I thought it was good. I liked it quite a bit. But the whole point there is that, he canceled those shows because he wanted to free up the money for basically this. Because in order to do this the way that they want, in order to do this right, you're going to look at 3 books, okay, that are going to be spanning at least across probably 6 seasons. I'm calling it now. Each book will be, because if I recall correctly, and it's been so long since I've read the books, but each one, the Fellowship, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King were all 2 books originally. So if each one of those books is spaced out to a 10-episode TV season, and that's 1 per year, then of course we could get ourselves all the way through over the course of 6 seasons. And that would be probably the best thing. Here's the problem with that, though. Here's the biggest concern with that. Why do people like Game of Thrones? Right? Why do people like that show? Well, not only is it exceptionally well made, and now it's kind of diverged from where the books are. No character is safe on the show. No character is ever safe, and we don't know who's going to die. We don't know what's going to happen. There are cliffhangers. There are moments when you don't know what's going to happen next, and so you're cheering and you're clapping. Going after Lord of the Rings and turning Lord of the Rings into a series like this is not going to have that cliffhanger. If they're going to end on a cliffhanger where people are like, oh yeah, no, this is where they fight Shelob. No, they're fine. At the end, Frodo loses his ring finger. Right, and then Smeagol falls into Mount Doom, and that's it. That's good, right? In the same time, who's going to play Smeagol? Are they going to get back Andy Serkis to come back? And they should get Andy Serkis to come back. I'm sorry, you can't not at this point. Like Shadow of War just came out, and they still had an Andy Serkis voice actor lookalike sort of thing playing Smeagol, right? So you kind of gotta have that at this point. So yeah, that's what I think is going to happen with that whole thing. It's a bold move. It is a very interesting one, and Amazon will just throw money at it. They will throw money at it. They will greenlight the entire thing. They will throw money at it. They will spend so much money on advertising, and on casting and everything else. And I would not be surprised if they try to pull away from a whole bunch of Game of Thrones cast members that are now going to be looking for work once the show is over next year. So that's a big part of it too, is we're going to get that as competition to Game of Thrones. And keep in mind, Game of Thrones is reportedly working on 5 spin-off series over at HBO. So Amazon wants something that will compete with that version of kind of like fantasy sci-fi. And there is, quite frankly, no better property, book form, to compete with something like Game of Thrones than Lord of the Rings. But at the same time, I would rather have a Wheel of Time series. However, just to kind of finish on this note, I would rather have a very truncated Wheel of Time series. It's 14 books. It's a great story with great characters and great settings. But goddamn, Robert Jordan could just drag out a scene. So shorten that down. Go, you don't need 14 seasons. You could probably, one of the seasons is just like, one of the books is literally like what happens in one day for all the characters. You know what I mean? Like that could just be like 2 episodes or something. So they're going to be able to really kind of shorten it up a little bit. And that's something I would like to see them really work on. But to be fair, I don't think we ever will. All right, so jumping over into Alien / Ridley Scott being annoying as hell news. At this point, I'm done with Ridley Scott. As Fox should come on in and take away the keys to the Alien franchise. Go no more. No, we're done with you. Let's move on. Fans hate it. No, screw you. That's kind of what's going on here, because he's saying that the beast has almost run out. So the Xenomorph, the creature for which the franchise is named, the creature for which fans have freaked out about over now for nearly 40 years, is almost run out, right? Not the engineers, not David and his bioengineering nonsense that he's trying to do. I mean, like, no, it's the alien that's almost ran out of time. And I mean, maybe to an extent I get that, but this is going down to an interview here where he says it was a crossfire of too much business on his decision to make Covenant instead of Blade Runner. I'm doing a lot of TV and films. There are 6 films going on this year. Now, let's a quick point to that one. I want to say I'm very glad he did not do Blade Runner. Blade Runner 2049 was fantastic, and I don't think we would have gotten the same movie had Ridley Scott directed it. He is desperate for his own version of Star Wars. He would have left Blade Runner 2049 open to like 2,800 sequels in hopes that it would have done as well as Star Wars did. And as we know, at this point, Blade Runner 2049, due to its cost and, well, its poor box office return, is going to lose about $80 million. However, I do think it's going to sell very well on home video. I think it's going to do very well there. Anyway, he says here, I figured it was a good piece of business to follow through Prometheus, which from Ground Zero had good liftoff. So we went to Covenant to perpetuate the idea and revive the franchise of the Alien. Except you didn't. You really didn't. You showed us like the birth of the Xenomorph, so to speak, which was cool. But you filled it with characters you didn't care about, period. A villain who, while interesting, was also very much known to be the villain because he was the villain in the damn first movie. A villain who then survived at the end and still will go on for this next movie, if it ever happens, to be the villain of that one too. And it's like, without a consistent hero, people don't really care. You can have the same villain twice. You gotta have the same hero to fight it. By having a different one, it doesn't make any sense. Unless Catherine Waterston comes back for the third one, if they ever make it. But he does here finish and say, however, he now concedes that I think the beast has almost run out personally. And yeah, sure. I mean, the first Xenomorph encounter that we got was, in 1977 or 1978 with the first Alien film. Or was it 79? It doesn't matter. The 70s. Okay. And then, of course, people wanted, that you got the horror film of that. And then we got, Aliens in 1986. And then Alien 3 in 1991. And then Alien Resurrection in 1997, I believe. Now, the thing is, most Aliens fans break down into 2 camps. You have the fans of the original and fans of Aliens. You want the psychological horror where in space no one can hear you scream. And then you also have the nuke it from orbit, man, right? Like game over, or nuke it from orbit, game over. Basically Bill Paxton and Aliens, which is awesome. And also rip Bill Paxton. I miss them. I miss him all the time. Whenever I think about him, I miss Bill Paxton. But that's the point. The point is, you've got those 2 camps. People want aliens, not so much Alien. And I think that Ridley Scott understands that now, but he doesn't care enough to give them what they want. They got the Space Marine action part of it, and that's what they want to see. And at this point, something like that would probably do better in television, where you could maybe mix both genres together by having different episodes play out differently than it would be going into feature film. And since all these franchises tend to generally jump to TV at some point, I feel like that's probably going to happen on the horizon. But the article here does finish. Fox hasn't confirmed if it's making the next Alien film yet, but it's not looking too promising. Of course, Scott may just be suggesting that the Alien itself has run out of steam, but without it, it's unlikely to take the films down with it, which is true, which is very true. What a lot of people want is they want Neil Blomkamp to pick it up. They want Blomkamp to come on in and do the Alien 5 with, Ripley and Corporal Hicks. That's what people want, and that's what Fox should do. Right now, Neil Blomkamp is going through his Oat Studios. He's making short films that are visually stunning and that are great because that's where he really shines. And I think he's rebuilding his cred there. What I think is going to have to happen next is the studio is going to have to come in, have a very tight screenplay, right? So put him with a very good screenplay and a very good executive producer, and then don't let him just have full reign, but guide him and watch over him. And honestly, probably the best person to do that would be someone like Peter Jackson. Bring in Peter Jackson, have him look over him again, and bring back the team that gave us District 9. And then never, ever, ever let D or Antwood or whatever their names are, near anything, period. They were the worst parts of Chappie. That was the thing I hated about it. I don't know, I'm going to go off on Chappie for a second, but I loved the concept of Chappie because it was the Tetraval short film that he had done. That was really great, and he took that concept and ran with it. Cool, like a Short Circuit sort of thing that was R-rated. But there was no likable character outside of Chappie in that movie, which made it very hard to connect to anyone or give a crap about their journey. And that's entirely my point, is Elysium was very similar. You cared a little bit about Matt Damon. You didn't care at all about, whether or not he fought Charlotte Copley in that one or anything else. You just didn't really care much. And that's the whole issue here, is you need to have a producer that comes in, like Peter Jackson, to work with him, to guide him, have a good screenwriter, and then you make Alien 5. That's what I want to say about that. So let's finish this thing up here. Let's finish this episode up today. This came out about a week ago, and I don't know how the hell I missed it, and I want to talk about it, saying that Avengers 3 is a heist film with Thanos stealing Infinity Stones. Now, that is something that I've been curious about. When I was watching Thor Ragnarok the other day, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, there's a scene where they go into the vault on Asgard, and Hela's like, oh, almost everything in here is fake, and she knocks over the Infinity Gauntlet that we saw back in 2011 in the first Thor movie that was there. And now we remember at the mid-credit sequence of Avengers Age of Ultron, there was Thanos gets an Infinity Gauntlet, and so we know that he's taking that, and we know that the Infinity Stones are relatively counted for. And we know a lot of what's going to be going on. And that's probably where the end credit sequence of Thor Ragnarok is going to basically be, is Thanos getting his hands on the Tesseract. Because Loki took it, right? Anyway, this is cool because this would then allow us to then, have a reason to fight Thanos. Because otherwise, there's no real reason. This is their bookend their bookend series for the first 10 years. And they've done very little to effectively set it up as being a thing. They've got one movie to go, right? One film to go before we get Avengers 3. And why at this point would the audience necessarily care about Thanos? He's been teased for 5 years. We got a couple glimpses of a couple bits of him with Guardians of the Galaxy, right? That was 3 years ago. He wasn't even mentioned in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I mean, outside of being like, Nebula and and Gamora talking, that was it. So again, that's one of my biggest complaints there, is like, I feel like they got ahead of themselves a bit, promised a villain, and they couldn't ever find a way to work him in. So it says here that co-director of Avengers Infinity War, Anthony Russo, describes the film as a heist movie revolving around Thanos stealing all the Infinity Stones. In an interview with CNET here, he says, with Infinity War, the biggest new element of the movie is Thanos, and the fact that he's entering the storytelling in a very bold, strong way, to the degree that he's almost one of the leads. We've shaped an interesting narrative around him that in some ways leans heavily on a heist film, in the fact that he's going after the Infinity Stones in a much bolder, successful way than he has in the past. the entire movie has that energy of the bad guy being one step ahead of the heroes. We looked at a lot of movies that had heist-style energy to them, and that brought some inspiration. So it's like a reverse Ocean's 11, so to speak, which I just want to point out right away, this image right here is awesome. I love it. It's actually my background on my computer. It's fantastic. And I mean, okay, just so looking at everyone here, all the characters, we can basically see what's going to go on. If you've seen the leaked footage coming out of Comic-Con, you get an idea of what's going down. But the question right now is, where are the Infinity Stones, right? I mean, the Collector, or there's the one, the Power Stone that's currently with the Nova Corps, okay? The Tesseract is in Loki's hands. The Aether, I forget where the hell that's at right now. That was, oh no, that's with the Collector too. He had that. So the Collector has that one. And you know, there's a whole bunch of other ones that are going around and whatnot. I on top of my head, I don't remember where they're all at right now, but the point is like they're everywhere. So if he's going to be jumping around, this basically what I feel is going to happen is Thanos is probably going to be going around and getting all of the different, you know. Okay, well there was a thing I saw the other day where they had behind the scenes photos of Robert Downey Jr. Wearing this. It was basically the end scene from Avengers: Age of Ultron when they take Loki in shackles and transport him back to Asgard, and they've got the Tesseract. They go back to that scene, complete with Thor in the same wig he had on, and everyone wearing the same clothes. So that either is going to be a flashback, or that's going to be a moment when he gets the time gem and goes back in time and steals it then, maybe? Right? Like, maybe that's one of those things. I have no idea, but we already know that basically Loki took the Tesseract at the end of Thor Ragnarok, so that would make no sense to go back to that scene. I don't know. There's going to be a reason to go there, apparently. They're spending a lot of money on this thing. You know, the rumored reports is still roughly $1 billion for the entire damn thing, and that's going to be interesting to see nonetheless. So, with Marvel doing this, you know, with Thor or Thanos and treating it like a heist film, I'm on board with that. I'm legitimately on board with that because I want to see how this is going to play out and how everyone's going to try and stop him. And then I also want to see everyone, you know, together. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And that's only a few months away. Like, I can't even believe that's only a few months away. I feel like it's a long time coming, and I'm definitely going to go back through and rewatch all 17 movies before getting into that one, and then probably watch Black Panther one more time too before then, because you know we'll be out on home video by the time the first Avengers or Avengers 3 comes out. So anyway, that wraps up today's episode. Sorry if I'm a bit more talkative than usual and it ran a little bit longer than usual, but there's a lot there always going on and stuff. So anyway, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. Be sure to leave your comments below. I'm curious to know what you think. If you haven't already, please thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, check back often for more episodes like this. Also, if you guys want to support the channel, you can do so with Patreon. It is right now probably the best way to do it. These videos get demonetized for some reason, even though I'm not swearing. YouTube still won't ever let us just make a living anymore. So there is that as well. And I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day, and peace out.